Hello again. I'm doing another practice. I'm trying to figure out the lighting at night, if it works. And also, I decided to talk about a couple more books, actually three, that I'm very attached to and that I think fit in with Victober. So I'm Faith from Faith&books, and I'm just getting started with this booktuber thing, and I'm interested in Victober. I did a previous video on it, and now I want to show a couple of books that really mean a lot to me. So my family, I have books from my grandparents, my parents, my aunt. I love old books, and I get very attached to them. And my family came over. Well, they came over at various times, but nobody was rich. We were really poor. We were coal miners and janitors and things like that. And they really pulled themselves up through reading and educating themselves through reading and through social activism, through union work. And they didn't buy new books because we were never wealthy. So they would buy these go to used bookstores and buy these old books. And some of them really fit in with Victober. So, well, at least this one does. Just referring to one now. And this one is The Book of Nonsense and More Nonsense by Edward Lear. He wrote limericks. And this book is so old, it's falling apart. I can't find the copyright or the publishing date or year. It says copyright, all rights reserved. It's lost the page, and it's really crumbling. It's really old. Unfortunately, it's not in good shape. But you can see the little book plate from my aunt, Jacqueline Anstead Brophy. This was a gift to her when she was a little girl. And this old book that's really crumbling. Let's see, when is there a date here? Edward Lear, doesn't say. Anyway, he writes these really funny limericks, really silly stuff. There was an old man with a beard who said, well, it is just as I feared. 2 owls and a hen, 4 larks and a wren have all built their nest in my beard. So this is what my aunt got as a child. Oh, it's falling apart. She was born in 1923 and 1924, but this probably was bought used because, like I said, they frequented secondhand bookshops because they weren't wealthy enough to buy books new, and yet they were avid readers. So anyway, so this is something I really treasure, even though it's falling apart. When I was a little girl, I read the limericks from here, and I still have it now. My aunt was very dear to me. She even, in her old age, she even lived with us for a year. She never married. She was a wonderful woman. And I love this book, and I treasure it. So, speaking of the same aunt, she gave me this book called Little Wide Awake. And it's a compilation of all sorts of children's literature from various children's magazines during the Victorian age. And here you can see her inscription to me for Faith. And it was Christmas 1970, so I was 10 years old. And Jackie, that's Jacqueline. And this book absolutely fascinated me. I loved all these woodcuts or these prints. And, oh my gosh, so many very didactic, often kind of ghoulish stories about what happens to poor young children who don't behave themselves. Really, really interesting stuff. Really neat art. I remember just pouring through this book that she gave me. Just a real treasure. Anyway, so this is a precious gift also that I cherish very much. And the third book is not an old book, but I bought this several years ago just because it looks so fascinating. It's called At Her Majesty's Request, An African Princess in Victorian England by Walter Dean Myers. And it tells the fascinating story of a young girl who is captured into slavery from West Africa. And just by the grace of God, she gets saved, and she winds up coming under the watchful eye, the caring eye of Queen Victoria. And she's raised as sort of an upper class nobility. I don't know how to phrase it, but anyway, it's really, really interesting story about her life, and just it's such an oddity. So if you want to read something really interesting from a point of view you're not going to get it from the Victorian novels. It's a really interesting bit of history, and it's aimed for, I would say, middle school on up. So it's fairly easy reading. So very interesting, and I highly recommend it. And that's it. Bye.